Matt, we've got our guy Web Security asking about whether the Oregon to the Big Ten rumblings recently could be legit.
Yeah, the very simple answer there is, of course, Oregon's going to want to make overtures. Like if Oregon's not making overtures, something's wrong up there at Oregon. The deeper reading of the situation is that, Phil Knight, this seems to be a Phil Knight move. He's pushing this as hard as he can, trying to make use of his influence at this latter stage of his life. But in terms of whether that fits what the Big Ten wants to do, that is a separate issue.
Somebody also had commented in here just in general whether we believe that the Utah hype is justified in regards to Utah. And I'll jump on that one for Matt here, just in regards to, the Utah Utes are somewhere in that 7 to 8 range in the preseason polls. Of course, Cam Rising coming back at quarterback. And after he was inserted in the lineup, they only lost one game. So where do you stand on the Utah hype?
You made the essential point, Mark, that, when we draw a comparison to USC history, we remember that Sam Darnold didn't come into the USC lineup until late September. It's exactly like Cam Rising replacing Charlie Brewer last year. So if we had assumed that Darnold had played the whole USC season in 2016, USC would have been better than 9-3, 11-1, at least 10-2. So, grading Utah along those same lines, we could add a few wins to the Utes. Like that San Diego State game. The San Diego State loss for Utah is probably a win if Cam Rising is in there the whole way and not inserted midstream as a backup. So Utah with Cam Rising is better than the actual record last year. And the other point to make is that Utah was a lot better than Oregon, the second best team in the Pac-12. It wasn't a slight difference. It was a huge difference. Utah dominated and blew out Oregon twice, once on a home field, but then again on a neutral field. So the gap between Utah and everyone else in the Pac-12 last year is why it's perfectly legitimate and reasonable to view Utah as the favorite. Now, I'm on record as saying that USC is going to beat Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. I do think that Utah will beat the Trojans in Salt Lake City. But I think those are the two top teams in the Pac-12. If Utah is outside your top two, that's a real reach. And my big thing is Oregon's not one of the top two. A Bo Nix team is not in the top two in the Pac-12. But if you're leaving Utah out of the Pac-12 championship game, that you are taking a really big risk in terms of making a prediction. I think in terms of Pac-12 sleepers, because a discussion of Utah obviously invites a discussion about the larger power structure of the Pac-12 for 2022 and what we all think here on the Voice of College Football. I think Washington State really is the good sleeper pick, and that's just because we don't know how high Cam Ward's ceiling is. If it turns out to be higher than expected, then the Cougars really have the ingredients to be much better than expected. They get Oregon at home. And Wazoo has beaten Oregon at home in recent years when that game's been in Pullman. So that's a thorny little game for Oregon. And, if USC runs into the injury bug, especially up front, then you could maybe see Washington State sneaking into that Pac-12 championship game. But that's the sleeper pick. It's not the expected pick. It's not the logical pick. But that's probably the best sleeper candidate. I also put Oregon State in the sleeper category because that game against USC in week 4 is not going to be easy for the Trojans by any stretch. So Utah, USC, the top two, Oregon third outside of the top two, and then you have Washington State and Oregon State as the sleepers.